Welcome to this section on medical. Um, my lovely wife, Melissa, will interview me in this section. And the intent here is really just to profile out what my medical condition is, more insofar as it will help you relate to the nature of my injury and disability, and for any potential learning that you can extract from it. So that's really what this section is about. Um, you may find this boring and tedious if you don't have a disability that is similar to mine. So that's what the section is going to be about. So, Melissa.
Trevor, can you describe what your medical condition is?
So, yes, I have what is called a brachial plexus avulsion, which is a tearing or a separation of the nerves from the spinal cord. The brachial plexus, just quickly by definition, would be the primary trunk that would take messages from your central nervous system or your brain to your arm so that your limbs can sense and function in the way you would normally expect. So that main trunk is what got severed, and that's called an avulsion, yes.
Hmm. When when did your injury happen?
So that was in 1983.
In 1983.
Correct. Yes.
And how how did you injure yourself?
So it was a motorcycle accident. I had what was kind of effectively a head-on collision with a motor car at an intersection, a Y sort of a Y intersection or a Y junction, um, is what it would have looked like from his side coming up the trunk of the Y. He came across the road. I collided with him, went over the top, failed to execute a safe crash landing, and here we are.
Do you think it would have been helpful if you took gymnastics and you could learn how to, land differently?
I don't know. I'm just glad I wasn't, you know, studying politics at the time. Otherwise, I would have been accused of flip flopping.
Well, I'm glad that you survived it and then you found me decades later. Can you tell us about the medical treatment that you have received in in your journey to
Sure.
fix, heal?
So, subsequent to the injury in 1983, at about the 7 year mark, I managed to find a orthopedic surgeon who managed to do a number of procedures on me that helped. At the time, my arm was just hanging limp. If I tried to move it, the sensation was similar to someone grabbing it. And the reason for that was because I had a very, very slight connection that caused my bicep tricep to spontaneously react. Um, the balance, there was just absolutely nothing. Um, and what he discovered was that if he was to separate my tricep from its tendons in the elbow, pull it over and stitch it in where the tendons of the bicep are connected in the elbow, when I did try to straighten or lift my arm, it would be much easier insofar as that both those muscles firing together are doing the same thing, which is just lifting my arm. It's a moderate movement that I have, but it's sufficient to call it functional to a level. We also did an orthodesis of my left wrist, which is really just pins through the hand wrist into the forearm area to secure it and to stabilize it, with a gauzing in the wrist area as well that helps keep it solid and stable so that I didn't have a flappy wrist. And the third procedure that he did was an orthodesis of the left shoulder. So I have a bolt and a gauze in my left shoulder, which stabilizes to the extent that when I move my shoulder, I have some movement of the arm. And again, it gives me a very limited level of functionality that I can do things with.
Hmm.
Yeah.
What impact would you say that your injury has had on your day-to-day life?
Yeah, well, I, I, I guess it's probably, necessary to point out that through years and years and years of learning, I probably have come to discover that one needs to separate out the injury and the effect that the injury's had. And simply put, I think that the injury itself hasn't necessarily had a profound effect on my life, other than, for the last 40 years, everything I've achieved, I've done so single handedly. I guess that makes me a global master at single handed achievements. But, there are some limitations, obviously, right? I mean, like pushing a wheelbarrow, you're not, the chances of me winning that race are limited. Um, so you're not going to be the greatest at that, obviously. But I've played a lot of golf in my life, and to be quite honest, let's say hitting a golf ball closest to the hole from 80 yards, there's no reason why I can't be the best on the planet at that. And there's nothing to suggest that I'm not pretty good at that either. So um, it doesn't necessarily have it hasn't necessarily had such a profound effect. I've had to adapt, obviously. I've had to learn. I've had to acquire new skills. But it's affected me profoundly in a way that it's led to depression, it's led to anxiety, it's led to anger. Unfortunately, big doses of all of those. I have a chronic pain condition, which is a permanent, ongoing thing that I experience. Um, and it's not necessarily that straightforward that I can attribute the cause of the pain directly to the injury itself, albeit that there's an extremely strong correlation between that and the emotions that have surfaced in my life as a consequence of that injury, um, versus maybe just simply as a result thereof. Um, so it's a little more complicated when you think about it deeper and you reflect on it deeper. Sure.
So, have you tried any alternative therapies?
Yeah. I guess maybe the earliest would have been starting out with things like acupuncture, with things like various massage techniques to relieve tension, to try and reduce pain that way. I've looked at it from a dietary perspective. You know, I've brought my weight down from 215 to an average of 150 through diet, to try and address it that way. All the way through to working on my energy fields using tuning forks to work in my biosphere. So I've tried everything that I know of. I've tried. Yes, I've tried a lot.
Of those alternative therapies that you have tried, such as acupuncture, working in your human biofield, and working on your energy diet, have any of those been effective in managing your chronic pain?
I would say that I definitely experienced some relief in the first instance, which would have been acupuncture. Problem is that it was only for a short period of time. And then I would have to go back and go back and go back and go back. Now, those things are not covered by health insurance. So it kind of rules that one out. And as you go through these therapies, you simply don't have the financial resources to necessarily utilize any of them permanently. So it's hard to judge from that point of view. But levels of relief from all. The ones that have seemed to have had the most profound have been mindfulness meditation. I think that was massive. Um, Not necessarily because it addressed the pain directly, but because it addressed that other bucket of emotions and blockage that I had in my life. Reiki has been significant, in the last few months that you've been practicing Reiki on me. And then the tuning forks working in the biosphere has been massive. Um, and those three big ones have worked pretty strongly in my emotional being to help me um, and free me from many demons of anger, pain, and depression that have been prevalent in my life for a long time. That I'm finding it easier to cope with, and I'm dealing with it better. Yeah, so sure, it works.
What would you say is the the most impactful or the least impactful, as far as alternative therapies that you've tried?
The dress procedure, in my case, worked out to be an extreme disaster. Right. I looked out the back door of life twice, I think, in that process because of that dress procedure. Um, it significantly impacted my health, um, my physical fitness, my strength levels. Uh, yeah, it had a very, very bad effect on
What
me.
do you mean you looked out the back door of life? What do you mean by
Well,
that?
in both cases, the situation became, reasonably life threatening, with the infection in particular, and then after the infection with the spinal cord compression, a bad fall or a big bump could have resulted in a talking head, so to speak.
I don't know what that means. A talking head?
Yeah, that's all that would have been left.
Okay. If if you could go back in time and talk to your 18-year-old self at the time of the accident with 40 years worth of experience, what would you tell your 18-year-old self?
I think that answer could cut a little bit deep. So, what I would say is that thought is what motivates me to do what we do. um, because in hindsight, it's okay. It works out okay. Turns out okay. Um, and you'll be all right. You'll make it. If you choose, you can thrive. Uh, you can live a full life. It's going to be great. But you see, at the time, I didn't. Um, at the time, there weren't ways to network. There was no internet. There were no cell phones. I mean, you couldn't network. How do you find, oh, well, so and so lives in this town, in this city, or there's this sporting group, or this support group, or none of that. So I hope that through this channel, we can get to all those who sit there thinking that it's over, and to tell you that it's really just a little metamorphosis because it changes. And if you choose to, um, my word, you're going to have a blast. It'll turn out good, but there's going to be hard choices. There's real knocks. You can go and look at the statistics. I'm not here to tell you how bad it is. Go to CDC site, Google how many people in the world are disabled, and see what the World Health Organization has to say. It's severe, bad. But if we can just get a message to people that there's no reason why you can't add life to your life, life to your days, and it's going to be good. Uh,
I've heard someone say whether you believe that you can or you believe that you cannot, you are right. What would you say to that?
Yeah. Just close your eyes and do it. If that's the way it works, you may as well just close your eyes and do it. Yeah, look, yeah, so Henry Ford himself said that, right? And that's, yeah, look, that's true in anything. Self confidence plays such a massive role in anything that we try to do in life. But it's not just about belief, right? Because belief itself is not a strategy, right? Belief itself is like a book on the shelf. That's my opinion. Action, on the other hand, is another story. So be brave enough, be timid enough, but get up and do it. And it's not about bravado and aggression or anything like that. Be mindful, look at the situation carefully, analyze it, and outsmart it. There's a reason why we have a brain. There's a lot less brawn on our bodies than exists on other creatures that co-inhabit this planet with us. A lot less. The reason why we are more influential is because we have the ability to think, and so let's do that. Probably the area where I live the most. Yeah.
Excellent. Well, join us on the trails.
It's going to be fun. And remember that as long as you choose to, you too can have a full life. Don't let anybody talk you out of a full life because somebody else has classified you as disabled. In my opinion, as I said earlier, I don't know that this term is such a big issue. I think it's maybe overplayed insofar as it gets stigmatized and there's propaganda around it that lead us to believe that it's the end of the road, that it's a catastrophe, that it is a significantly disabling event that has occurred and that has happened. It isn't. It will be if that's what you choose to focus on. But in my case, when I look at it, I'll have to say to myself that it's only a small percentage that's been paralyzed. The rest is still perfect. And I would argue that the same applies to everybody else that faces this challenge. I get it if you're a quadriplegic, but it's up here where the real power lies to make a difference for yourself and for those around you. So, yeah, let's go out, baby. See you on the trails.